Welcome to the show. I am your host, Matty Marshall, and I'm really stoked to have Raney Stanczak from the victorious Tampa Bay Damage on the show today. He's been in the game absolutely forever. He's got an incredibly inquisitive and intelligent mind, and coaches lots of teams on the divisional circuit here in SoCal. And yeah, he's played on a laundry list of top pro teams over the years, and just played a starting role on Tampa Bay Damage's line. And they went undefeated at the last event in Chicago to take the win. They've been doing a decent amount of winning the past couple seasons. So going to pick his brain about all that, and then mark your calendars for the World Cup as it's already starting to rapidly approach. It's going to be November 8th through the 10th, biggest event of the year. It's probably going to be 600 teams, probably 6,000 people there. And it's going to be interesting too, because we're going to be bringing in some teams from overseas, a team from South America. We got a lot to talk about here in the weeks leading up to World Cup. So, and we'll be bringing you guys, some of the best and the brightest that we have in the pro leagues to discuss all these intricacies as we move forward here. So without any further ado, let's bring Raney Stanczak in and start picking his brain. Because, man, Raney, first of all, congratulations. It was a really solid event. I mean, to say, that's like the easy way to say it. It was an incredibly amazing event for you guys. You went undefeated. You beat some top teams. And some other guys were getting some spins in there, but with the injury to Jason, so Jason Edwards goes down, and then it was kind of like a perfect layout tailor-made for your skills, because you're more mobile than Jason is, but you can shoot bodies on the break too. Anyway, want to pick your brain about a lot of things, but just kind of how you feeling about the win right now?
Oh man, it just feels good to win, especially we just changed, sponsors. So our sponsors were real happy. Falcon sponsored us with paint this event. So, they're pumped. HK picked us up. So they're super excited. All the HK guys were in our pit. And, it sucked that Jason was hurt, but Jason played a huge role, helping with the team. He had the hate booth going, like giving us feedback when we come into the pit, right? Jason sees the field better than anybody. So just to be like, hey, your paint's too high, your paint's too low. Hey, your paint was right there. Hey, your bounce shot was 2 seconds behind the guy. Get on the bounce shot a little earlier. So, if there's any problems, like the old saying goes, winning solves all problems. So, man, it feels good to come back with the win.
Yeah, you guys are playing a brand of paintball that it's very successful, obviously, but it's interesting from a stylistic point because, a couple years ago, people were like, oh, Damage plays slow, but in the modern incarnation of the game, you have to be able to play defense, you have to be able to play offense. But the way you guys play the game is so intelligent, because you'll take ground when you need to. You'll play, at a high level. If you're down, you got a ton of offensive guys who love to go, but then you take these crucial spots and you're just really hard to gun battle. I mean, you guys are, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about what strategy you guys were working with as well too. But when did you find out that Jason was injured and that you were going to have to kind of, slot in that role? Because, you're Mr. Versatile. You can, you've done it. You can play in the back. You can play as a 2 on either side. You can attack up the middle. But when did you kind of know, okay, well, it's kind of on me. I'm going to have to really, step up. I mean, obviously you're an all-star, so no big deal for you there. But when did it kind of dawn on you, like, oh, dude, I'm for sure playing every single point, pretty much, at this event?
Yeah, I heard Jason got hurt, and Joey told me he was out for the event. So, but I had an idea I was going to play the home, but we discussed Brian playing the home, Chad playing the home. Like we had different looks. I was the 2 on the D side at practice. I was the 2 on the snake side. We had Brian launch out of the home. He attacked the middle. Chad attacks out of the home. He's more of a bruiser. So like we had different looks. And then I think it was the Thursday night before, I was just like, Joey, what's your plan? And he's like, I'm going to start you in the home and go from there. And we kind of just had, different plans that if things didn't go well, we could do different things. And it's crazy when you win a tournament, you leave a lot on the table. We never were really down a lot of points. So we never had to really attack the middle recklessly, right? Like most we were ever down were 1 point. So we left a lot on the table that we didn't have to pull out. But yeah, so it was probably like that Thursday night for sure. I knew I was going to play the home. And I played the home on Impact. I played the home on X Factor a few tournaments. So it's just like, to me, when I play a layout, I'm going to learn the snake side, the Dorito side, the 2, the 3, the middle. So it's like, it's not like any of the process is different. Just the only thing is different when you get to the event, instead of always having to just walk your spot, now you have to walk everyone's spot, because you have to know how to play the 50 Dorito and the 50 snake and the up the middle. You got to know how to play every single spot, whether you get to do it or not. Like I never got to be in the 50 Dorito, and we discussed before one of the matches me getting in the 50 Dorito. But Jacob and Chad never really died on that side a lot. So I never really got to have fun over there. Most of the time, like the guys dying off the break were on the snake side. So most of the time, if I filled out, it'd just be on that snake side.
Yeah, if we can kind of jump into the tactics a little bit, you guys were doing a good job of shooting bodies on the break. You were taking some risks, and more so on the D side. Keith, you would occasionally send, but if you look at those, the impact game and then the, so your semifinal game and your finals game, the finals game was interesting because you guys did a really good job of pushing the D side a little bit more and then counterpunching on the snake side because Axel was, kind of basically on your guys' side a ton and you were winning more gunfights than X Factor. But it was kind of one of those situations where, that wasn't a snake where you could, if you did play aggressive like Axel was and you got way up there, I mean, he was definitely doing damage, but you guys were doing a good job of eating that damage up, no pun intended, and then just playing some really smart, awesome gunfight heavy paintball, making great counter moves, making moves on yourself, pushing issue when you need to. But it was interesting. Was that kind of intentional? Like, hey, let's save Keith and we're going to risk him a bit here and there. But let's send him out wide. We'll work him in there on an insert. Whereas they were just kind of sending Axel every single time. I mean, he's getting the 50, getting on your guys' side of the field.
Well, I think the first point we risked him off the break and he died off the break. And, so we felt better if we got 5 alive. Like, even when Axel got into our snake, I mean, I think he shot me the first point. But most of the points when a guy got in the snake, they didn't really capitalize a lot on them being in the 50 or them being on our side of the field. Even on the Dorito side, like playing the home, I like by not leaving the home, I wasn't vulnerable to be getting shot in the back from any of those 50s. But what I was able to do was pick up when those guys were in the 50s. So rather than those guys get the free kill, they now are shooting at me and they're locked in on a gunfight or just trying to, pinch me out of my spot and exposing where they're at. And then by that process, now Jacob and Chad know he's there. Keith and Brian know he's there, whether it's the 50 snake, 50 Dorito. So they don't really get those free kills now. So we minimalize the free kills by kind of me being able to just fold up in the home and play it. And, like I said, once they shot Keith off the break, we were okay with Keith kind of being the counter punch. It's almost like a game of checkers, right? Where if they came to our side, now we could jump their piece. And so one of the points you saw Axel come to our side, he's shooting inside at me. Keith just got in the snake. It exposes that he's there. Keith now goes and shoots him out, bunkers him clean. And they didn't get anything for that aggression. And then Keith put that nice shot on Matt Jackson. And at that point, it's game over, right? So we did a good job of really not allowing our opponents to be rewarded for getting into these 50s because the 50s were easy to get into.
No, they were. It's just the survivability was great because it was Keith's ability to counterpunch and play really smart, win gunfights, and then your ability to, plug holes when you needed to, shoot bodies on the break, control, put a lot of pressure downfield, and keep that crucial crossfield communication. And then, man, just Jacob Edwards and Chad Bougier had a tournament over there on the D side, because the way those Doritos were, those are fortresses. I mean, the D2, D3 spots, even D1, but even when they're on your side, if you don't know they're there, and lots of guys were getting shot from those positions, but their ability to kind of tuck in, survive, and then counterpunch from that side, it was awesome, man. Like it was just, almost perfect paintball in the sense that you guys, like you said, you weren't really playing down. You won every single game. You beat some really awesome teams. I mean, heading into that, let me ask you this question, Raney, because middle of the season, it's been Red Legion this and Red Legion that, and rightfully so, because they haven't lost a game since Vegas until X Factor beat them. So we were kind of sitting there before we went live and people were asking me, like, what do you think? I'm like, man, Damage looks really good. And I mean, they've won some tournaments past couple years. Their starting line's looking amazing. And they just beat Impact. But maybe X Factor is fated to win this one because they haven't won in 5 years. And they just beat the team that's undefeated for the whole middle part of the season, coming off of multiple wins in a row. And Legion was smashing people again, even though they lost by 4 to X Factor. Their plus minus was plus 20 still. It was 43 points for, 23 points against, because they were still smashing teams. They mercy ruled the Hurricanes. They mercy ruled Revo, beat New York Extreme by 5 in the prelims, and then beat Fit by the mercy rule in the quarterfinals, and then just all of a sudden fell apart against X Factor. So heading into that last match, I was like, I don't know, this should be a really good one. It ended up not even really being that close, to be honest. The final game was, what was it, 5-2, and Mevo was kind of 4-1 with 1:30 left, and then we had a couple quick points. They ran at you guys and scored one at the end, but that game was kind of over after Keith won those 2 gunfights in the snake, and you guys just kind of locked it down. Again, just incredibly intelligent paintball. But so that's my question. Were you like, hey boys, we need to ramp this up because somebody finally beat Red Legion and they look pretty good doing it, when you're gonna need to bring our best game out here? Or what was running through your head at that time? What were you guys saying in the pits?
I mean, honestly, like for us, it's like once we got that first win against Uprising, I felt like we were going to win the tournament. But that first match is always scary. We've been eliminated in that quarterfinals match by Shock and Russians. And so, like, once we got over the Uprising match, I was like, all right, I'm pretty confident we beat Impact. And then going into X Factor match, like, I was just like pretty confident that we matched up well against them. And I know they put a lot of energy into that Russian game. So I just felt confident we were going to win that match. And even though we were 5-2, all those points were like super contested, right? Jacob and Keith were just winning gunfights left and right. And that's what, like, at practice, I was leaving the home a lot. I would get out of the home. But I watched during the event, people would make bad fills and get chopped up and just throw that body away. Or they lose a 2-on-1. I watched Revo they like shot guys from their spots, and then Shorty makes a move and just runs out. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to give up 3 kills. I'm going to try to get people on the break, but I'm going to make sure all my teammates know that everyone's alive and know that where they're at in the 50. Because if I can just give Jacob or Keith a little bit of information of where the guy's at, give it a minute of me just sitting there getting pinched, they're going to shoot one of those dudes. And every single time, like, they did. I mean, Keith and I won a 2-on-4, and the guys, like, in the 50 snake, the 50 Dorito, they're all pinching me out. And I'm just yelling to Keith, and I'm watching Keith just gunfight everyone lawlessly. And I mean, 2 dudes are in the 50s taking turns shooting at me. And then the guy on the Dorito can is trying to lock me off from filling out. So I'm locking up 3 guns, and Keith is just, well, there's one. Oh, there's one. He's just picking bodies off. Maybe if I had different personnel, I would force the issue more. But it was just like those guys won so many gunfights, and I understood what we had on our team and in our arsenal that it just made it easy for me to try to shoot a body off the break, hide and stay alive. And so when we played X Factor, they were similar to Impact, where JC was coming down to our snake and Axel's coming down to our snake. And as long as we allowed that guy to get in our snake and not capitalize on kills, I had full confidence Keith is just going to get that guy off the field. And I mean, so it was just, it almost felt easy in the sense that we would get a kill, get 2 kills, and just kind of wear them out and close out the game,
Yeah, it was. And maybe you could speak on or say more about the role you were playing. I mean, you definitely just laid it out pretty concisely, but you just see a lot of this where guys that play that role, where, okay, which way do I fill? When do I engage? What lane should I try to hold down? When do I hide? When do I gunfight? And you were just making a lot of the correct decisions, like you had just said, where you're like, oh, okay, well, sometimes I just, okay, guns are shooting at me. I don't really need to engage right now. Oh, okay, we just lost bodies and I have the drop and this guy's getting an angle. Okay, I engage here. But talk to me about the checklist that you use in your head as to when you are going to engage and when sometimes you just, like you said, just, okay, Keith, go to work, dude. There's 3 dudes on me. Make it happen, baby. Let's go.
Well, like, the Dorito side was very simple. If we lost a guy, it wasn't that crucial that I got out. Jacob or Chad, like, the odd times they did die, which didn't really happen a lot, the one of them could hold it down. And then even when I filled out on the snake side, you see one of those, Chad came my way. Some of those times we lost Brian and Keith. So really the only time it was like immediately I got to get out is if we lost Brian and Keith and they're in the snake, because at that point that guy's going to come down and shoot us all. So I might as well run the numbers, roll the dice, and get out. But if we had Brian or Keith out wide, I could take my time. So I mean, that was the only time that really forced the issue. But a lot of the times we had everybody alive, and I would like to get out of the home, but it made no sense when Axel or JC was wrapping the snake 2 or snake 3 and putting pressure on me with all 4 of our guys alive. I mean, their front guys are shooting at me and I'm really doing nothing. So that means I'm getting shot at by him or somebody else. And it's just kind of freeing up Keith to be free or Brian to be free. So, I went up the middle early on in the tournament and I there was value. Like Krill was going up there chopping people up. A-Rod was going up there chopping people up. But
Rodarte from
it was like almost
Infamous.
Yeah, so but they were like solo. So if I'm going up there, like I'm not talking to my guys, like I'm headhunting, because if you sit in that snake wedge and that guy gets in the 50-degree, you're dead. So you have to turn when he's in there, but you're trying to lock down the snake. So it's like you don't want to sit in the same spot because those bunkers light up for your opponent to get to kill you. So now you want to headhunt and try and kill people. So now maybe I die or I don't die or I win an easy point, but it opens the door for the other team to now come down, maybe shoot one of us, and then get in the snake and get a bunch of free kills. And if I just looked at myself as the third chance to get in the snake, like Keith's the first one, Brian's the second one, I'm the third opportunity, then I feel like then it's just a war of attrition on that snake side. And the snake side could single-handedly win the game. So as long as we had 3 guys out, like, and the other team only had 2, like we're going to win that just simply based on numbers. So that's really how I looked at a lot of it. And the times where I couldn't fill out, just try to make everybody on the team just aware of the situation and where everyone's at. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah,
like
it was just
I want to attack the middle.
It's hard,
but it
didn't
make sense for how all our guys were playing. It just didn't make sense. And it was like I said, I left things on the table, but sometimes in a tournament, it's like, it's just about trying to just get the W, not doing the fancy moves.
Yeah, and that's what's tough about it, though, is that what decision do you make at the specific time, contingent upon what's happening around you, how your guys are playing, who are you playing, what's the situation? That was kind of, I was wondering, and one of the questions as I was rewatching that semifinal and final match was, I was like, okay, well, both X Factor and, as you were mentioning, so X Factor's getting Axel up there, and then JC for Impact. Zupa was in there as well too, but it was I wouldn't say you guys were conceding the snake battle, but you guys were kind of willing to play a little bit more counterpunch over there, knowing how tight everyone was playing and how many gunfights you were winning. It was almost like you were suckering into a trap a little bit, like, hey, come to our side. Okay, you're not going to get any kills. You're probably not going to shoot anybody, but just get a little closer. Okay, now Keith's going to drop the hammer on you. And then now you guys have the snake, and then and then a couple more gunfight wins, and then you guys will win that point. Some of these games were close, though. Again, we were, talking about the that last match, and you're right, the points were pretty close, but you guys were winning the majority of the points, and the 5-2 score, again, some of that happened at the very end of the game. Essentially, it was like 4-1, and that was pretty much when the game was decided, because you guys had barely any time left on the clock and a real big 3-point buffer. But if you look at that Impact match, that was a 1-point game, and you guys went up. They, went up 2. They tied it. I mean, that was a battle. And Impact's, that's just 2 events in a row where I'm looking at Impact just roll through the prelims, and I'm thinking, man, maybe this is Impact's turn. And that's another team that has, not too many years ago, they won 2 in a row. And I really like how that lineup has been looking. And then you guys also want to hear you speak on Uprising, because, what a different look for Uprising here at this event. And they saved their season, and they looked like a new team out there. It was really cool. They were playing some very methodical paintball, but almost very close, not completely mistake-free. They definitely made some mistakes. Every team is. It's impossible to play mistake-free paintball. But they were scrappy, and they were smart, and they were kind of dragging points out a little bit and making a lot of correct decisions. And that was another 1-point battle that you guys went through. So you had these, very close games to get to that final match. But, so was that like a tactical decision, or was it just kind of happening how it was going on in the flow of the game? As far as like letting them get in the, them being a little bit more, your opponents being more aggressive in the snake, and then you guys kind of, tightening it up, win a gunfight here, wait for the right moment, drop the hammer, shoot that guy out of his spot, and then take over the attack.
I think it was just more of a moment thing. Like if they gave us a snake, Keith ran the snake. If they gave us the corner, Keith ran the corner. So we were going God, corner, snake with Keith every time.
Yeah.
And then Brian floated a lot, but yeah, it wasn't like, hey, let's let him get in the snake. We were like, hey, let's try and shoot him off the break. Let's have Brian float here. Let's try to get in the snake and match him. So it wasn't, let them get in there. But if they do, like, we have complete confidence that our guys are going to win gunfights. And especially when these dudes get to the spots and they've been rewarded, countless times to getting free kills. And now they got Jacob Edwards or Chad across field with their barrel looking at them. And, Jacob doesn't miss a lot of shots, neither is Chad. So it's like, it makes it easy when you hear you're Snake, or maybe on a different team, you'd panic a little more and force a fill. But, when you have confidence in them, it's easier to have composure and just kind of call out the spots. Because, I mean, there's a few times the guy was what we called our 700, that little Dorito, he didn't get kills. But Uprising, man, they were a whole different team. And if you kind of look at it, I mean, they picked up Mark and they picked up Nate. And those dudes played 100% of their points on the Snake side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 40% of their lineup. So now you take all those original dudes they had 3 more spots for all the original guys. So now that's, when you have 2 dudes that just consistently play at a 9 or a 10 on that side of the field, now it makes it a lot easier for you to get consistency out of your team. And then Holland came in, who hasn't been a typical name for those dudes, and he played well. So now you have 3 guys that haven't really been the typical names for Uprising. Now you have 2 more spots. So you're telling me 5 guys just have to, figure out to play 2 spots. That's going to make that team be very consistent. And, that was a grinder of a match for the prelims and for the finals and, quarterfinals. But yeah, those dudes played really well. And, the impact game, we got 2 easy points, and then they got down, they scored 2 quick points, but I felt like we kind of gave them gunfights back. And then we scored 1, and then we were up 4-2, and then they scored 1, and then we scored that point that should have put it away. And it was 5-3 with like 46 seconds. And then they had a point where we shot some guys on the Dorito side. They ran down the Snake. Arena came down. They scored a quick point. And then the very last point, we chopped them up pretty quickly. But against them, I think JC was just making it in there. And the route he was running, it was really difficult to shoot that Snake guy. You had to put it right over the top of the 2 Vs and maybe hit him going to the God, or we called it Bravo. But if he dove into Bravo and just got up and dove again, the only lane there was really far off the back or a floater. So JC was kind of running it correctly, to the sense that it was tough to shoot. So I kind of turned my gun and tried to slow Brandon down. There's a bounce shot over there. There's a couple lanes over there, and just kind of realized JC's going to be in our Snake, and it's only a matter of time until Keith gets him off the field. But if we can keep Brandon from getting up the field, I think that would give us the advantage rather than them both being in those 50s, instead of wasting a gun on JC.
Yeah, it was smart. And like I said, Impact they're going to be a favorite of Cup. I mean, if they can keep that team together the way it is, and they have a lot of guys, so they've been kind of mixing it up. They ran 2 lines in AC. This one went a little bit more starting 5 as it progressed. But yeah, it's just a lot of talent on that squad. So that was a really, but you got, it was interesting with how your tournament went too. Oh, before we kind of go through some of these games, and then want to talk to you about some of these other teams. But just, playing like we talked about Chad, we talked about Jacob Edwards, a lot of his buddies call him Jake, but then, Brian Smith is the quiet killer over there. And then Keith Brown plays with a lot of heart and emotion. What's it like playing with Keith Brown and Brian Smith? Just because they on the field have kind of slightly different personalities. They're both super nice guys off the field. But Brian Smith is this calm, methodical killer, and Keith is a wrecking ball out there, snapshot master, launches, he'll drop the hammer on you in a second. Smith will too. But it's just interesting. I mean, kind of talk to me what it's like to have those guys in front of you, because that was kind of the triple pack of bodies on, from middle over to the Snake side for you. And then, like I said, Edwards and Bougier were so solid over there on the D side. And, Horn got some spins, some other guys got some spins, but, the go-to guys were Jacob Edwards and Chad Bougier D side. But what's it like to have Smith and Brown in front of you on the Snake side?
So with Joey Blute, Joey Blute does a really good job. He's at practice. He's a hard ass. He makes sure we're doing what he wants us to do, and we're making sure we're attacking the Snake, attacking the middle. He's giving us input, but he does give us some freedom, right? He does give us some freedom. Like, Keith, what are you feeling? Okay, so that Keith's doing something, then Brian's going to do something. So I'm listening to these guys that are the highest level break down the game, and I just kind of look at, which way do you want me to shoot? Jacob, you want your way? Brian, you want me your way? So they're having the conversation walking to the gate of what they're going to kind of do. And then sometimes, we would abandon looking Snake or abandon looking Dorito. But, I played with Keith for a long time, so I know he's fiery. And I was talking with him before the event, and, we had not had the best season so far. So I knew he was hungry for a win. And, you could just see it in him that he was spicy, he wanted to win. nothing he was saying to any of these dudes was personal, but it was just more of like, like to everyone, like I'm winning this tournament. So, with him and Brian, like they're actually really calm out there. Even though Keith was chirping a bit, but they're pretty much kind of the same. They're very calm, cool, collected. They're never too hot in the pit. So it makes it easy playing with these guys that are just super good, and they just kind of point me what I need to do. I don't necessarily need to be like, hey, you need to go here, you need to do this. It's just like, which way you guys want me to shoot? Cool. All right, I'll try to feed you guys information and hope to not mess it up for you.
Well, you definitely didn't mess it up very much at all at this one. You guys were, again, you went undefeated. But maybe talk to me a little bit about that pressure, because, or if you guys were even feeling pressure, but when you have a top level pro paintball team, you are expected to win. Damage has definitely won now, I think, 4 tournaments in the past 2.5 years, and a couple second places. It's been a pretty impressive run back to greatness, and it's tough to win a tournament, and we've seen a ton of parity out there. So much so that there's only 3 teams that have made every single Sunday: Legion, X Factor, and Houston Heat. Houston Heat's had its own struggles. They haven't been able to win on Sunday, and the X Factor's now had 2 second places, but they've been very consistent. They're second overall, and then Legion 2 wins and 2/3. But for you guys, you started off the season with a 13th. Coming off how well you guys did last year, we're thinking Damage is going to have a chance to win any tournament that they're in, and obviously that's still the case. And then a 6th, the 7th, and then now this first. But since you're heading into event 4, still no wins, was there added pressure to go out there and actually put another win on the board, or how do you guys deal with that? What's the vibe like on the team for that situation?
Yeah, I don't think there's like any extra pressure for the guys, because these guys have been doing it for so long. At any point, Brian Smith and even Holiday, like they could just walk away from the game and be content, right? But these dudes love the game. That Holiday's been dealing with an injury, and all he's been trying to do is get back on the field, right? And he could easily just walk away. So, we just kind of do the same thing, go through the same processes. Maybe the only thing we maybe did different is Joey had us do some different drills the non-layout weekend. We were doing a lot of 1-on-1s, 1-on-2s, 2-on-3s, really focusing on our communication. In Vegas, things just weren't clicking. We had a lot of issues, but one of our biggest issues was communication. And we even the one event against the Russians, we lost a 2-on-1. And we weren't saying, hey, he's on me, he's on, he's looking this way, he's looking that way. Just simple things. So we really, this whole event, just focus on communication. If we knew they were in the 50, he wasn't going to shoot anyone. If we knew that we lost a guy, Jacob was like, all right, we lost 2 guys on the Dorito side. There's a threat coming down this, or we lost 2 guys on the Snake side. There's a threat coming down the Snake side. Jacob now knows, like, hey, you know what? Maybe I'll force this gunfight. And then what do you know? He shoots a guy, brings it back. But that all comes down to communication, right? Knowing where our opponent's at's huge, but knowing what we're doing is super huge, right? Having the communication off the field and having the communication on the field. And I really think that was our success, like anytime the guy was in the 700, our guy on the Snake side could shoot him out. Anytime the guy was in our Snake, the Dorito guy could shoot him out, or we could go bunker him out. So our main goal at practice was communication. And I didn't really feel the pressure coming in. We really wanted to win for the new sponsors that came up. And, the Falcon had never gotten a team in the pro finals to win a tournament. So like you're kind of wanting to win for them. Chris Jansen is an addition to our team with stats. So like you kind of want to get his first win. So like definitely, there's a little pressure maybe on that first round on Sunday, but as the tournament goes on, you get to the finals, you just kind of find your groove. You don't really worry about it. I almost tell myself before the break, just kind of like be light, be light with the gun, right? Rather than try to grip the gun too hard and just be calm, because if you're too intense or too tense, it's you overdo it, you over move, you over gunfight. So you just kind of let the game come to you and just go with the flow.
So before we jump into some of your thoughts on some of these other teams and these brackets for Cup, you had a kind of an interesting road through the prelims. Again, you guys did go undefeated, and we've been speaking on the the close wins you had in the beginning, and then that nice win on Sunday. The close wins against Uprising and Impact, those were 1-point victories, and then how successful you guys were in that final game against a team that just beat Red Legion. But in the prelims, you guys absolutely destroy Blast Camp, Mercy Roll win first game, and then have a really close game against Uprising, 1-point match. That was a battle. Then you go and destroy the Bears 6-1, and then have a really close game against Houston Heat. That was a little, but again, undefeated 4-0 win your division, but it was a kind of a seesaw, beat the brakes off of a team and then have an insanely close battle. Beat the brakes off of another team. Okay, insanely close battle. What's that like for the people out there listening when you're kind of going through those? Again, you're winning your games, but it's like, whoa, man, that last one was close. Okay, oh, that one was easy. Oh, Jesus, this is another fight. So what's going on in your mind when you're having those types of situations happen?
So against Blast Camp, like the first match, you don't have any homework on the team. So Brian was able to do a good job floating. And like on Friday, he floated a bunch. And I was listening to his podcast with Marcelo and Tyler. And he said on Saturday, he struggled a bit. And it's because people did the homework and kept him from floating. But he was able to do a good job shooting people off the break and making us have a lot of quick points. And the one point that the Blast Camp should have won, I mean, like Keith shot Holiday in the pack, and then Holiday gets a penalty, gets Keith pull, and it's a 5-on-3 with them in the snake. I was able to sneak out. I dunked on one guy. Chad makes a move, shoots the guy trying to come get me, and we win that point. And now instead of it being a 2-1 game, and it could have been a close match, now it's 3-0. And then every time we got up a point, they would concede because they were trying to win the match. So that one they gave us a lot of those quick points rather than making us shoot all 5. Then we played Uprising, and it was, we were in control of that match, but it ended up being a close match. We knew it was going to be slower against them. Just had that feeling. And then same thing kind of happened with the Bears. We got a couple points, and then they would come down, and they were, well contested points. But then once we won that point, they would just start conceding. So they'd start giving us points, and it just kind of got out of hand. And then playing Heat, like I knew when they lost Blast Camp their first match that they were going to play us, like they had to win. Like I knew that was going to be a Sunday game. We were 3-0. They're 2-1. If they win that game, they win the bracket. If they lose that game by a lot, then they're out. So they're not going to go out there and try and run up the score against us. They're going to go out there and make sure if they do lose, they lose by a point. And if you watch their matches, sometimes like Ronnie was running down the snake and just shooting people and taking risks. And then against us, they're up 4-on-1, 4-on-2, and Ronnie's laying there waiting for me to come bunker him. Like they played it very smart. They played it like a 5-man style paintball where each body alive mattered. And it came down to the overtime and just, came down to the neck and wire. And so it's just kind of like you have to be ready for the mentality of going into the deep water. And if team starts giving you these points back, then you just take what they give you. But sometimes you just got to be willing to go out there and have that mentality. Like if it takes 12 minutes or 15 minutes to win 1 point, we're going to do that. And I think that's how a lot of our mentality was throughout the event. Like we're going to go out there and we're going to play this 1 point to the best of our ability. And we're going to focus on our communication. And at any point, anybody in a 1-on-5 or 2-on-5, we can win it. Joey didn't concede points when we were down bodies because he knows what everybody's capable of. So, you never concede in a 5-man game. If it's 1-on-5, you're hoping that dude wins it. And so that was our mentality from start to finish throughout the event.
Well, since we just kind of spoke on Heat, because I do want to get your thoughts, because, we're heading into World Cup, and it's the last event of the year. It's the last chance for everyone to prove themselves. There are obviously some favorites. Heat's still in the running as a favorite. They just kind of struggled a little bit. Well, struggled on Sunday. I say a little bit. They haven't won games on Sunday, but they're not losing by a bunch. I would have to check through all my complete notes, and that would take too much time. But I think their loss to Impact was the biggest loss they took on a Sunday. It was a 1-4 match, and they did lose 2 in the prelims at this one. No Chad George at this one, but they get Connor Kelly back. But they've been incredibly consistent, a fifth, and a sixth. They're 3rd overall. So, and then as far as, and they get a bye, so they get the bye into the quarterfinals. So it's kind of like, yeah, they're going to warm up against Legion, X Factor, and Scalp at Cup while everyone else has to fight through their crazy prelim brackets. You guys are going to be in one of those brackets. So I want to get your thoughts on your bracket. But for Houston Heat, what are you seeing? I mean, you've been playing against Houston Heat for years. You're familiar with that team. Obviously, mostly coasting, not coasting through the prelims at this last one, but the first 3 were pretty much cruise control through the prelims. And they just have not found a way to be able to win games on Sunday. What do you think's the problem there? And, what would you change if you were, in control of that squad?
Well, I don't want to give away, I don't want to help them. It's a team like that with that high caliber of players. You don't want to be
I
like,
gotta
hey,
ask
do
the
this, this,
question.
and that. Here's the blueprint.
I
Yeah.
know, but I gotta ask the question
But
because
like
you're
just
an expert. So
no, 100%. And you just watch it and it's, like they almost have to win that first point, and it just seems like they're just losing a body or two bodies real quick, and then they're down, and it's something's not clicking. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but you can tell something's not clicking off the field, and it's maybe transpiring on the field, right? And it just something's off. It seems like some of them are on different pages, but I'm not 100% sure. But I know that team is just they have the best of the best, and uh, they're not a team you really want to play late in Sunday, because if they're in the finals match, you're playing against Fedorov in the finals. He's figured it out. So I mean, I don't mind them. This is where they're at, because there's been times where they just like they're the scariest team in the league, and so right now I don't know. They got to figure it out. I'm not sure exactly what it is.
for a second, I thought you were going to say something like, "Well, if I'm still on damage, but I'm controlling Houston Heat's destiny, it's going to be nothing but burgers and shakes. No practice. We're not doing any drills. We just want nothing but points. Yeah, try to get as out of shape as possible before World Cup. That would be my advice to those guys. But yeah, I know I agree with
Yeah,
you. It's
this.
just one of those things with. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
How many times have they been hungry and like had a struggling season and then gone in the World Cup and then they just win World Cup? I mean, they did that 2 years
Yep.
in a row, right? And then COVID
Yep.
year hit and Fedorov didn't get a chance at his third one in a row. So it's like those guys have the ability just to turn a switch on and just be the toughest team to beat in the league. So I don't really want to give them too many pointers and have to face that type of Houston Heat.
Yeah, I mean, they did win 2 World Cups in a row. I remember I was playing golf with Randy Smith, the owner of the team, and he was asking me. He's like, "Well, Matty, what would you do?" Because at the time, they pay their guys. Well, they still pay their guys, but a top name player wanted to get on Heat, and he's like, "We just won the World Cup, again." It's just so now 2 years in a row. He's like, "What would you do if you were in my position? Would you pick this guy up? Would you not pick him up? I mean, do we need him? Do we not need him? He's obviously good." And I was like, "Randy, you just won the World Cup 2 years in a row. So you don't need him. The question you have to ask yourself, is that going to make your team better on paper? On paper, it does. But then is it going to make when you're in the trenches with your boys, like you had said, maybe there's something going on off the field. Who knows? But that's kind of one of those situations where I'm like, yeah, I mean, dude, you could pick that guy up, and sure, it might make your team a little bit better, but again, you just won the World Cup 2 years in a row, and you are one of the scarier teams out here. So, yeah, I don't think it would surprise anyone if he showed up and won World Cup. We'll see about Chad George if he can come back from injury. So they might, because you know, I don't know if they're going to play the 3-man or all that sort of stuff. But some of those guys are getting a little bit older. Being deep is good. What do you think about X Factor? So I mean, you guys just played them, and again, I know you're not trying to give everybody these, okay, here's exactly as your opponent what I think you need to do to beat us, but they've just it's been 5 years since they've won a tournament. You played on that team. You just played against them now again in the finals. They've taken second place twice. They're pretty good. At the beginning of the year, I was looking at that lineup and I'm thinking, man, I don't know how long this is going to take, but there's a really good chance they could win a tournament in the next year. And then now 2 finals appearances, but they just haven't been able to get it done there quite yet. They had actually a closer game against Legion to conclude it on Thursday in AC to conclude the Texas tournament than they did against you guys. But what's your thoughts just generally on X Factor?
It's funny. Actually, I ran into Ryan after the AC event, and I gave him like, "Hey, this is what I would do if I were you." And then we're about to play him in the finals, and I was like, "Ah, shit, I shouldn't have said that. That could come back to bite me in the butt." I'm not gonna say exactly what it was, but man, they're a scary team. They have a lot of good players, and it'll be interesting to see with no Axel Godin, but they get Billy back. And the huge thing is Tim Stetzel had a stellar event. So now they have all the confidence in the world that now he can just take over a one role on this side of the field. But I mean, they were good. Meter was playing good. Matt Jackson was playing good. TJ's playing good. I was talking with TJ before the event. He's been in 7 finals. And I'm rooting for him when he's not playing against me to win an event. I was hoping when I was on his team we'd win an event. I think we played 2 finals together and we both lost. So it's like you feel for them because they got 2 seconds, and then they got a second last year. But I mean, they're close. They're right there, and they can beat any team, and they have the ability to go at any gear, right? They can play the slow game, or they can play the super fast games with the Russians, right? So I mean, they're a deadly team, and they got a great owner, and they got a great coach, and they got a bunch of good players. So it's like, it's not a surprise that they're the team making Sunday all the time, and they've gotten 2 finals appearances.
What do you think about Dynasty? They've had a very interesting year, and not in the best way most recently. Obviously, they got that win at the first event in Vegas to continue this crazy, 4-year run. I mean, I sound like a broken record, but as a keeper of the book, I have to say it because this is just the truth. It's been Dynasty's league since the COVID break. Coming back off the COVID break, they've won close to half the tournaments. So they win the first one, and we're thinking, oh, it's going to be okay. Is it going to be another year where Dynasty just kind of, winning half the tournaments again, and it's going to be everyone versus Dynasty? But then they take a 14th in Texas, and then a 4th in Atlantic City, and then they miss a Sunday again. And they've done this before and sometimes made it on. If you look at their plus minus, it was close because they lose their first 2 games on Friday. They lose to Infamous by 2, and they lose to PB Fit by 2. PB Fit has beat Dynasty twice this year. Only times they played. And then they beat ML Kings by 2 to get it close, and then have this game against Shock where it was back and forth. I mean, honestly, that game against Aftershock, that was one of the most entertaining games I've seen all year long. Then they end up going 2-2, with a -1, and then they miss another Sunday and take an 11th place. So now that's 2 Sundays that they've missed, and sitting at 7th overall, they go back into the, they're not getting the bye. So they're going to have to play through, the prelims battles just to make it to Sunday. But just from what you've been seeing, what do you think it is? What's missing? Or
it's crazy because
they went from being. Sorry, go ahead.
If they would have won one more point against ML Kings, and I think they're winning, they're up like 3 or 4 points, they would have moved on because they tied with, I forget who was the other team that made it on, but they literally tied on their spreads, and then it came down to points against you. And so they had more points scored against them, and that's what kept them from moving on. So you definitely don't want to play Dynasty when they're 2-2 and they figured it out. But it's funny, that same night in Atlantic City, actually it was in Philly, as I had a hotel at the casino. I came back and I walk into the blackjack table and I see, Greenspan, Archie, Ryan Brand, I think it was Dixon and Arturo. And it was Ryan Brand's birthday. So we all had a couple drinks. We were sitting in the bar, and I was telling Ryan telling Ryan Brand what they need to do. And you still there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
There we go. Yeah. So Greenspan's like, well, what do we need to do? And I was like, man, F you guys. Like, you guys been winning too much. You guys can lose for a while. Like, I don't want to tell you guys what to do. So as an outsider looking in, sometimes it's easier to see what the problem is than when you're actually in the problem. Somebody came up to me in Vegas and they're like, man, this is what you guys are doing wrong. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell us that before the event? They're like, or during the event. They're like, well, we don't want to really help you. So yeah, I mean, they're a dangerous team. They have, 1 through 10 can hit, and they got a great coach, and they're a good team. So it's like, I mean, it's kind of nice to see them to not be dominating everybody, like having that not make Sunday, and then the blind layout, which I think hurt them. And then now it's like, maybe this puts a little water on the fire and kind of slow down the roll. And, Russians won a bunch of events. So it's like, I don't mind seeing Dynasty lose, they're a dangerous team, and kind of have them be kind of grinding the gears to try to figure out is kind of a good thing for the pro paintball players.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because as somebody that has to kind of, we sit here and when we start kind of game planning for content, okay, what stories are we telling and how we kind of, trying to hype this event and tell, kind of put all the, have all these different narratives. There's 200 pro players, there's 20 teams, there's a lot of stories to tell. Who's doing well? Got to focus on the winners, obviously, but the big stories. But for a while, I'd be sitting here trying to work up a voiceover or something. And I'm thinking, okay, how do I say that Dynasty is awesome for the 7th time in the past 20 months? It's just so it does. It also it gives a lot of hope out there to everyone else. It's good when new teams win. So the fact we have a situation where Dynasty wins the first one, now they're struggling a bit, missed another Sunday. You guys missed a Sunday in the beginning, but then you rise up and you win the event right before World Cup. What's Legion going to do? You know, I mean, was it just one hiccup? Is there some bigger problem there? You know, that's to be, you know, that's up for discussion. That would take some time to discuss, but there's just, and then there's some teams that are on the, you know, it's like you got Shock, you got Heat, you got Impact. You know, the Hurricanes are sitting at 8th, but they've kind of been riding the struggle bus now because they had the 2nd place in Vegas, but then it's been 3 missed Sundays in a row for them. And then you get down to PB Fit at 9th, and there's some other teams down here. Some I think are underperforming. Some have now risen to where they probably should be, but that's, you know, where should you be? That's up to you, you know? Anyway, let's talk about some of these brackets here. Cause you know, I gotta let you go here, cause I know you're probably going to want to watch this Padre game in a bit. So let's talk about bracket A. You got Shock, Hurricanes, Bears, Diesel, and then Dynamite. What do you think about that bracket? And then my question for everyone when we kind of talk brackets is, you know, who do you think is going to win? And then, or do you think there will be any surprises there?
Yeah, I mean, Shock is definitely, like, in my opinion, the toughest team in that bracket. They beat us twice this year, so I mean, personally, I'd rather play Impact than Shock at this point. Shock's been good. You know, they had that one event in Vegas. They needed to figure things out. But those 6 dudes, Todd Martinez is doing a good job with them. And I mean, they got a 2nd, a 4th, and a 5th, I believe, and then like a 16th or something. So, I mean, that's going to be a tough team to play. Impact will be on top of it. Dave's been doing a good job. And when you have 10 guys on your team, you can make a lot of good adjustments. I think you said Bears, Diesel, and Blast. I don't remember playing.
Hold on just real quick. So it's Shock, Hurricanes, Bears, Diesel,
Hurricanes,
and Dynamite. Yeah, Hurricanes.
Hurricanes are like, man, they like came out, almost won an event. They were up 3-0 on Dynasty, and now they've been they have just, I don't know, they just seemed off, you know. I mean, I know they dealt with injuries this last event, but they went from I think for them it's very layout dependent, you know, for their success. So it'll be interesting to see how World Cup layout is. I think that Blast team, like, if it's the same group of guys I remember playing a while back there, they are a pretty good team. And then Diesel, I mean, I know I just heard them, their coach is gone. They got rid of Cody. I mean, they have, like, if you look at all those teams in tier 4, like, they're the only ones with guys that have won pro tournaments. So it's like they haven't figured it out, but they have guys that are capable of winning. So it's like they could go out there and beat all 4 of those teams and be the 1 seed going into Sunday. But I don't know. You know, they have a lot of searching to do to figure out what they need to do to win those games. I mean, they lost 2 games by a point at the last event, and they got 2 majors in the last 60 seconds. Like, they literally had those games, and then they just right there, and it's you know, it's tough. It's tough to watch sometimes.
Well, and Diesel's had a decent amount of that. So I talked to Ryan Gray today for a while. Really smart guy. Love Ryan, and you know, he's close to everyone on that squad. And you know, him and Mark go way back. But I kind of said, all right, well, you know, doing a show today with Raney, and he's like, dude, Raney played great at the last event. I can't, you know, that's going to be going in. And also check out their the coaches show. But I said, well, what can we tell the people? And he said, well, tell them that that Mark has decided to take his fate in his own hands, and him and Spica are going to be kind of tag team in the coaching duties for Cup. And I'm happy that they released, you know, at least for Cody, because with the way that the rosters work, if you don't release somebody, then they can't go play for another team. So I'm glad that Cody will be able to play. Who got picked up by Revo, I believe. It was Revo. So that's going to help Revo. And then Ryan's going to coach Scalp, which, you know, Scalp's not going to have Malloy, but they didn't have Malloy at the second event, and they still won it. And they won all 3 events over there. And Scalp's going to be they could be a fierce team out here at World Cup.
But who did they have for their hired gun though? They had somebody though for that event. They had Urena.
Let me see.
I think they had something. They had a U.S. hired gun.
Hold on. Give me a second. So,
it's funny though, because I've actually played a tournament with Mark Johnson and Ryan Gray as a coach on Texas Storm back in the day. But yeah, it's, you know, you wish them the best, but man, like, hopefully Spica and Mark Johnson are able to figure it out. But it's almost like I'd rather see, just Spica coach or just Mark Johnson coach, right? Like you don't need to have two chefs, two chefs cooking. You just need one guy cooking and one guy bringing the ingredients.
Yeah, no, hold on. I'm sorry. I was just trying to find this, that second event, who their hired gun was. So it was, give me a second to pull it up. No, I mean, that's kind of one of those tough things. Arturo.
Okay. Yeah,
at the second event. Yeah.
So they need to bring somebody in. They maybe bring in like Fabian or someone from Europe. Like they need.
Dude, Fabian, bring the Viking in, dude. Fabian's a beast. I love Fabian. I love watching Fabian play. He's really.
Maybe I shouldn't have said that.
I talked. Yeah, wait. I see. Yeah, Raney. They're probably like, okay, yeah. Let me get on the phone real quick. Does anyone have Fabian's number? We got to give him a call. I talked to Fabian last year at World Cup, and I was like, bro, we got to get you on an American team. What's your regular life like? Can you fly over? Or I mean, you have the talent to play. It's and I would like to see him with a program where, because when you get somebody that's, if you dedicate yourself to a top level, and I love I played with Joy Division, I love Joy Division. But if you go into like a top successful program in the United States, a team that wins tournaments or has won tournaments recently, like that's a program. And you just learn so much through osmosis there just by being around guys that have won tournaments. How do they react? How do we game plan? Practices, all that sort of stuff. That would be a good one if they could pick up a Fabian. But, when I talked to Ryan about that, and I was like, well, you guys don't have Malloy. And he's like, okay, well, they didn't have Malloy at the second event. And then he started kind of going through that roster, and he has a lot of faith in that roster. And obviously, one guy does not make a season. So every time I would turn on the webcast for the European series, like he was slaughtering people, but it's not one dude shooting everyone all the time. If you're going to win 3 events, one event, sure, maybe 2, but 3 events, I don't know. You definitely need some help.
Malloy's pretty nasty.
Anyway.
He's been having a pretty ridiculous season.
Oh, bro, I saw your facial expressions. I don't disagree with you. I'm slightly playing devil's advocate here because I was saying the same thing to Ryan. But it is true though. I mean, like that, you do have to have a supporting cast in order to help the main lead actor who's going out there and carrying all the weight. But anyway, so to me, it's a very compelling story because they are going to get, that bye. And in case people don't understand how it works. So you have the top 4 teams. It's the top 3 teams and the top team from Europe. And then they essentially get a bye in the quarters. And then, so they're all essentially going to play each other for seeding, which doesn't really mean much because you don't know who, okay, cool. So 1 or 4, who knows who catches the hot hand coming out of the prelims, how that all shakes out. So that's just a crapshoot and like the roll of the dice for the paintball gods anyway. But they're going to play 3 games. So we're going to get to kind of see scalp here in the States and all the fans that haven't been able to check it out and see what they have, because, and then now they're warming up for seeding against the other top 3 teams. So, that's, we talk about deep water. It's like, bro, that's the deepest of the deep water right out the gate. Only difference is there's no pressure, not as much pressure because everyone's making it on no matter what. So we're just kind of tightening things up and trying to figure out who's playing well. And sure, we'd love to get that 1 seed and going with some momentum. But if I'm in that, if I was in that situation and I was running a team, I would be hoping we would get into some fights. Let's get into some close games. Let's fix some stuff. Let's figure out what's actually, let's push the machine until it breaks. Because if we're not doing that, we don't know what to fix. But it's still a very compelling story heading in, to this, into the biggest event of the year. Okay, so let's go bracket D real quick. This is your bracket B. This is your bracket. Damage, Fit, Aftermath, Notorious, and then Spider Fusion. So you guys catch the team, which been hitting some people up. I'm probably gonna have to coach Shallow, but not a lot of people know a lot about Spider Fusion. So that will be a bit of a dark horse here at this one. But they won the Latin American Championship, so they earn the right to play in the Pro League here for World Cup. Your thoughts on your bracket?
I mean, like I was looking at the schedule and the bracket, and we've been playing Notorious a lot this year. They beat us at the first event by a point, and we played them 2 times and beaten them convincingly. But that will be a good match because this is our 4th time facing them. Aftermath is always a sharp team. They, sometimes they play that very slow game. I think we had a match against them last year that we probably should have lost and we barely won. And then Fit has been grinding teams out. So it's like, I know experience-wise, it doesn't look like we have the toughest bracket, but I do think we have a tough bracket. Like, I mean, Fit, Aftermath, Notorious, like those are gonna be tough games. And then you're playing against a team you know nothing about. Like, I'd kind of rather play against a team. I'd rather play against a bottom level American team that I know something about. At least you understand what you're going into. So I believe I'm trying to think. I think we play Fusion maybe third. I don't think so. I think we'll get some homework on them, but it could be tough if you don't win that first match out of the gate, because I believe we play one on Thursday, two on Friday, and then our last game is on Saturday against Fit. So you don't want to go into Fit 2-1. So you want to beat Aftermath and beat Notorious and beat Fusion before you go play Fit. Not have to be in a do or die situation. But it's kind of nice though playing in this bracket versus the bye bracket. You're already on the death sweat. If you start losing matches, you're done. But those other teams, I mean, the death sweat. I mean, Dynasty did win out of that bracket, but it just, for us last year, we won all our games and then we lost the first match to Revo. So you don't have that sense of pressure, which, we were talking about earlier. I think that pressure, it makes you play the field correctly, right? Like you're not just taking these risks because you don't have to get punished for it. You're like, we played Heat that last game of the prelims, and it was a Sunday game at Saturday afternoon. Nobody wanted to give an inch. That's why you saw it go straight to overtime in a 2-2 game. Heat's a fast team. We have fast players, but that was the type of mentality going into that game. So, I'm looking forward to our bracket, but it definitely won't be an easy one.
What do you think about bracket C? Impact, Ironman, Infamous, ML Kings, New York Extreme. Extreme playing for their lives in the Pro Division. They're sitting last place. They need to have a Sunday showing really to save their season. ML Kings have been mostly missed this season. And then Infamous also, I mean, it's been interesting with Infamous, and then the Ironman have been very inconsistent, a third and then a last place. And then they made a Sunday on this one, took a 9th and lost to Uprising by 2 in the wild card round. So they've been kind of all over the place too. And then you get Impact. We spent a lot of time talking about Impact. What do you think about that bracket?
Yeah, Impact's consistent, so they're probably the favorite to come out. NYX is going to be all hands on deck. Like, they got to get everything they got not to get relegated. So they're going to go out there and give it their best effort. And I think some of their guys are healthier now, and so I expect Extreme to come out tough. And ML Kings, maybe they aren't on paper the strongest team, but it's like, I think the second event they made Sunday, we saw them at practice, and I was like, man, they look bad. And then they come to the event and they make Sunday. So I mean, they have that ability to figure it out. Ironman, they could be a top 4 team or not. They have a lot of good players. They have a talented team, and they're kind of similar to Infamous. Infamous could be tough or they could struggle. But I mean, I think Infamous only struggled the second event. I think every event they've made a Sunday. So Infamous is always going to have a pretty good squad together. It'll be interesting to see if Cali is back and if ZP is healthy. So that will really change their team, if they get all those dudes.
Cali should be back because he just had a kid. He's healthy, and he's on one of those, 75 hard challenges where he's just going to be shredded monster for a World Cup. I talked to Zach Patient. He's on the bubble as far as being able to be back for Cup. He just had a relatively serious back surgery. He had a disc that was not completely blown out, but I talked to him for a while. He's definitely, his head's in the right space. He wants to come back as soon as he can, but he is not really sure. He said that he's on the bubble for being back for Cup. And Patient's been a big part of their offense. So we don't really know so Cali 100%, I'm almost positive. Patient's still on the bubble. And you are right. They only missed one Sunday, but the Sunday they missed was an abysmal performance for them. It was a 20th place, last place. They couldn't win a game. And they have made 3 other Sundays, but, having a hard time of getting out of that, either wild card or quarterfinal match, a 7th and 8th and a 10th. And if it wasn't for Jonah Jamrose, pulling off a crazy move, which ended up winning them the money from Pate Smith Law, then they probably would have tied and go to overtime. Who knows what would happen there? But yeah, but I really do believe in the. I like the lineup for the Ironman, and I like the lineup for Infamous. The Kings, I like the lineup there. I feel like they're still trying to find their identity as far as when we get to the tournaments and how they're actually going to try to play paintball, because they're kind of, are we going to try to slow it down a little bit? Are we going to utilize our speed and our aggression? They kind of grind the gears on identity, I feel like, a little bit. But they had, so they took a 16th or 17th overall. They took a 16th at the last event, but they beat PB Fit by 1, and then they lost 3 in a row. But they lost to Shock, Infamous, and Dynasty, tough bracket. Those were all close games. Their overall plus minus was a -5, which losing 3 games is not that bad. It was a 2-point loss to each one of those squads. So 3-5, 3-5 against Infamous, and then 4-6 versus Dynasty. They were scrappy. They were definitely scrappy. Those were entertaining games to watch. So yeah, it's a fun team. I just I don't know where they're at right now. That's going to be up to them to see how much better can they get between now and Cup, and then they play a little bit more mistake-free paintball, because they definitely are just making too many mistakes to hang out here and do better than they've done, because it's been 19th, 10th, 15th, 16th for them. Let's move on, because I gotta let you
anybody
go.
Can make it out of that bracket minus Impact. You know what I mean? Like those 4 teams, like of those 4 teams, like anybody, it's not going to surprise me if any of those teams make it on with Impact. The only upset that I would see is Impact doesn't make it out of that bracket.
I couldn't agree more. Impact's the big favorite in that bracket. They've been incredibly consistent. Well, they did miss a Sunday, but there's only 3 teams that haven't missed Sunday so far here this entire year. But Impact is, I agree, they're the big favorite there. They've been overall and have looked a lot better than those other 4 squads. That's blatantly obvious. But as we know with paintball, I mean, Jesus, like we said, it's been crazy this year. So who knows and it's Cup. Cup gets extra wild. So who knows? So last set here, bracket D: Dynasty, Revo, Blast Camp, Uprising, and the Tauntauns.
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, this is the bracket of death, just because Dynasty and Tauntauns, like Tauntauns almost beat Dynasty to move on to the finals last year. And so Tauntauns are going to have Axel and, God, I don't want to butcher his name.
Hugo.
It's the guy that came from Bears. Hugo. So they have, those 2 dudes are going to be, yes, they're going to be running a racket.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to play Tauntauns. Like, that's the worst ranked team in the bracket. Man, that's a tough bracket. Then you have Revo. Who else you say?
Well, just real quick. So NXL posted something like, "Oh, what's the hardest bracket?" I was like, "D, bro. You got the Tauntauns down in 4th."
Yeah.
Oh my God. And they get Axel and Hugo, and they that's, and they're the quote unquote worst team in the bracket. I'm like, dude, that's rough, because it's, if typically when you get a bracket, so we look at these other brackets. So whatever. You got NYX, Spider Fusion. So it's basically the 3 foreign teams, and then NYX. And I've heard good things about Dynamite, but then you look at, tier 4, Diesel, Notorious, ML Kings, Uprising, whatever. When we have these bracket of deaths conversation, I just talked about this on the Spick and Span show. We talk about this all the time. I immediately look to tiers 4 and 5. I'm like, what are the tier 4 and 5 teams?
That's where it matters.
And why are they there? Yeah, like that's what matters. That's what's going to make it to the bracket of death, because we do have top teams stumble, but yeah, the ones are a wash. Like, whatever, dude, like pick it out of a hat. Top 4, okay, one team might be on a run. Legion was just on a run. You guys just won the last one, whatever. But I look at those tier 4 and 5 teams, and then you have the Tauntauns in tier 5, with Uprising in tier 4 with how good they just played. I'm like, bro,
Uprising
that is
they figured it out, so they're going to be tough. So you have Uprising's going to be tough. Tauntauns are going to be tough. Revo can be tough. Who was the other team?
So it's Dynasty, Revo, Blast Camp.
Yeah, Blast Camp. And then Blast Camp, they have a bunch of guys in the arsenal. They can attack the middle. They can attack the snake. They're a very diverse team. And then they just beat Houston Heat. They're capable of beating good
Sunday
teams. So it's like, yes. Yeah. So I think that's going to be a tough bracket, and you could see an upset out of that bracket very easily.
Yeah, and 100%, bro. Like, I look at this bracket, I'm like, rough. Dynasty's going to be pissed because they've missed 2 Sundays, so you're probably going to see the best Dynasty we've seen in a while. They're going to be working very hard. Then you got Revo, who also missed their first Sunday at this last event, and then they just picked up Cody Mikowski. So Revo's going to be out for blood, and they took an 18th. So they went 9th, 7th, 10th, 18th, losing 3 games. Yeah, dude, they're going to be pissed off. And then Blast Camp, it's the last event. Their season's not at stake because, they did make a Sunday, so they're fine. But, hey, man, nothing to lose. Let's go out with a bang. Let's try to surprise the world and and do as well as we can at this tournament. And then Uprising unlocked the key. And yeah, but between Mark, Nate, and Holland, those dudes were lights out. They were outstanding. And then just plug and play whoever else from that, the rest of those guys is going to be Graham Arnold, is going to be Borromeo, is going to be Olsen. I mean, that's a pretty nasty lineup. And they got some other guys out there too. So Uprising looks scary. And then the Tauntauns. Again, I feel a bracket D is to me, that is the unarguable bracket of death. And that's probably a hill I'm going to die on a lot of shows talking about everything moving to World Cup. If anyone wants to argue with me about this, I'm going to argue this one until until the end of the day. I will probably die on this hill because I don't see how with Tauntaun sitting. Okay, yeah, they didn't win a tournament this year, but with them sitting in fourth and how well Uprising looked and how pissed off Revel and Dynasty are going to be. Yeah, dude, I feel like that's the toughest bracket. That's the bracket I would not want to be in right now.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Well, Raney, thank you so much, bro. Really appreciate your time. Man, you guys were incredibly impressive in your undefeated run to win that event. And Damage, I can't say Damage is back because you guys have had a very successful past couple seasons. And it definitely didn't surprise anybody when you won. But to me, when I was kind of going back and rewatching some of these games, it's just the ability for you guys to play whatever the situation was. If we have to play fast, we can do that. If they're making the snake, we can contain that. Oh, we need to burst open the side. We got to win some gunfights. Cool. We got that. It was just kind of across the board at anything that was needed at the right time to just do all of those, to check all those boxes to win every game, to win the tournament. And now heading in, you guys are, obviously a favorite so it adds a kind of a bunch of compelling stuff to the story that you guys are, because again, as we've been discussing, is who's it going to be? I mean, there's just so many, quote unquote favorites for World Cup. It's going to make it really entertaining to watch. It makes my job a lot easier. I'm really happy that you guys stepped up. So thank you so much for your efforts. Anything you want to let anybody know about clinics? Obviously you're for hire to coach. I know you kind of already coaching a decent amount of your time, but anything you're selling, anything you want to let people know about?
No, I mean, my weekends are booked till middle of December. I'm next week, and I'll actually see you out there I won't be playing DK Nations, but Sunday at the duel, I got 2 guys from my team competing in it. So I'll be out there Sunday, and hopefully one of those guys is coming away with the W. But yeah, I mean, a lot of my weekends are booked. It's every weekend, like I said, till December, and got something going on.
Well, it's kind of cool because we have professional paintball players, and there's different tiers of that. So there's guys that play in the professional league, and yeah, you're a professional paintball player, but then we actually have professional paintball players that get paid to play the game. You're one of those guys. And then we also have paintball professionals, guys that are people that work for a company or have a company or teach, mentor, whatever. And you are both a professional paintball player and a paintball professional. And I'm glad that we have you around, Raney. So thank you so much for your time. And yeah, I'll see you out there this weekend. I'm hoping the Glorious will take another W here in the Joust, and then the duel, who knows? And then if you guys, maybe if you're out there, I'll see you, because I definitely want to get some, just got my autocockers up and running, courtesy of Cocker Top, which is like the go-to guy for fixing autocockers right now for me. So I'm happy that I got some of my collection that I'm going to be taking out for a spin at this big game.
Yeah, I have to come by and take a look at that gun, give it a couple pulls. I miss myself a good autococker. I used to have a bunch of them.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Again, we're going to be talking to and checking in with the best and the brightest as we lead into the World Cup, biggest event of the year. Again, mark your calendar, is going to be going down November 8th through the 10th, down in Orlando, Florida. Major League Paintball World Cup. Can't wait for it. And again, Raney, thank you so much. I'll see you guys next time.